And they are just requesting an extension of the substantial completion date from August 6th to August 28th, due to the fact that the original bid had the August 6th date, and the actual completion or the actual approval of the bids and the execution of the contracts was delayed by a couple weeks due to the rebid of the HVAC system. So they're just requesting this so that there is no financial penalties placed on them if substantial completion is not completed till August 28th. So no cost to the district, no additional cost, no credit, just asking for an extension. So we just need to board approve it. If that's okay, if the committee's okay with it, we will have it on the board agenda for the June 8th board meeting.
The only question I have is, does that impact school starting back up in the fall?
It could, and I'll invite Mr. Trout to also talk to that too. I mean, I don't know that the office will be completely move-in ready by the completion or by the start of school. I don't think this will prevent us from at least using the front door, the new entranceway. It just may mean that the office people themselves aren't quite moved into their office yet, and a couple more things to clean up. But I'm hoping that we will at least be able to use the front doors and bring all the students in through those doors instead of having to divide them up. If we do, we have a plan. We had a plan for how we were going to do that this spring. If we were still in session and they were starting, we would just follow that same plan for bringing them in for the first week or two of school until this substantial completion, we reach that and kids are in the building.
What is the scheduled start date for the fall as of right now?
I don't have that in front of me. Do you know that, Mr. Vukovic, off the top of your head?
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me either. I can look it up while we're talking.
It's August 22nd.
August 22nd. There we go.
So my concern is that part of the reason we're doing this project is for security and for getting people used to the new way to access the building. And I'm okay with giving them some time, but I do think we need to use the new way to get into the building, visit, whatever, on the first day of school. I think it's going to be too confusing if the rules change during the beginning of the year.
Let me weigh in for a moment here. He's asking for extension due to the governor's shutdown. I've seen these extensions being twice this long because the flow of the project and the supplies have been disrupted. We don't really have much of a leg to negotiate this. He's asking for 20 extra days for a significant shutdown. My second point is that we need to make sure that the other three contracts are married into this completion. We don't want to turn around and find the other three contracts are asking for more money to go to use this as a date. So I would Greg, you're on the phone. If the other three contracts can also be included in this motion, since it's a prime contract.
Three or two? What's the third?
There's the general, the plumbing, HVAC.
Oh, I know you.
Electrical.
The senior high.
No, it's just this one. This is one of the four contracts is asking for a time. I don't want to see the other three contracts come in and ask for more money because the general contractor delayed the project. So it'd be good if we had this all done at one time and no confusion about when the date. It also may be useful to let them know that we're starting school on the 22nd, and could they get done by the 22nd? This is substantial completion, which would mean that the building is not finished, but is usable. So at that point, I would expect the doors to be in and the light switches to be there. So I would think that even on the 22nd that they could start using the main entrance. There's not going to be they're not going to be pouring concrete on the 28th. There is my point. So it's certainly worth having the conversation with the contractor on the 22nd But we need to, we will be doing it from a position of weakness.
Well, my comment wasn't necessarily directed at the contractor, but I do want to make sure that we can actually use that entrance. And
Well, Travis just sent, the students don't start till August 31st. The teachers start August 22nd. So I think with that information, I think, it'd be important for Jared and Greg to have a good conversation with them.
Yeah, I mean, all the contractors are aware of this extension because we talked about it at our Thursday weekly meeting last Thursday, but we can follow up with them this Thursday with all the other three contractors to make sure that they are not going to come back with something if we approve this. So.
Yeah, well, Jared, I'm sorry, am I still on? Yes, Jared, it would make sense that all four contracts were nested. So you would do a change order for each of the contractors to match this date. If this was a single contract, then what you're doing is fine, but there's some potential confusion here.
I agree, Tom. That's a good point. I mean, some of the other contracts may have to be done before the August 28th date to allow the prime to be finished by the 28th.
Well, my concern is the electrician is planning on being done by the 22nd, but he won't be able to because the general is delayed. And then he comes back in and we get in this finger pointing contest at the end of the job.
Right.
If everybody agrees to now, then there's no conversation at the end of the job.
Right. Understood.
We'll ask all the other ones if they're okay with the exact same change order, so they're all on the exact same page.
Jared, can you say again what the reason was for this? I thought you said it was because there was a delay in awarding the bids to begin with, the contracts to begin with, but then Tom said it was because of the COVID-19 stuff. What did they say?
It's probably a combination of both. It just was that the final notice to proceed and all that was not, and they weren't given access to the site until April when the original schedule had March 23rd. So I think it was probably a combination of both.
So were we a full 20 days longer in the delay? That's why they're asking for 20 days?
I don't want to say it was an exact 20 days. I don't know why exactly what 20 days to them. I did not ask the significance of that 20 days.
Okay.
And you could do that, Jared, just for reference, I guess. We don't have a bid item as a schedule in these contracts, right? Just a contract completion date.
We have a substantial completion date was in there.
Right. So there's really, I mean, we could ask for something, but they don't have to give us anything.
Jared, I'd be surprised if there wasn't a requirement for a schedule.
We have a schedule.
I mean, but where the general contractor actually produces a critical path method schedule and hands it to the other three contractors. Is that what you're asking for, Terry?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, if there is one, or Jared is.
I'd be surprised if there's not one. It certainly would be a standard question.
Yeah, we do have a master schedule that they sent out to us, and it has all the general and the primes listed on it. So we do have their dates when they have projected out as far as what's the very last date on it was 8:30, and that was the electrician, and that was to have the trim and everything on it.
In that schedule, Greg, that it lists the tasks that they're performing and the time frame they're planning on performing those tasks.
Correct. They have the start and the finish dates.
Yeah. So it's like, is it a bar graph? Did they do a graph on it or just
So they could basically revise that schedule and show that's a bar chart. Yeah. So
there you go.
That's perfect. That's what I was expecting to see.
They could revise the schedule, show where the delay was. And then the thing that you just said, Greg, you said the electrician wasn't going to be done till 8:30, August 30th.
Yes, and which is typical. The electrician's usually the last person. Everything's painted. he's going in and putting up the covers on. He's the last person typically in there anyway. Now, that does not include a punch list items. A punch list, is always after the date, and
Right.
we could be moved in. That's not going to be an issue either. As far as them having the masonries, as far as the sidewalks should be done by 8/4. So if they're going to have the sidewalks, those are going to be ready. They're going to be obviously driving across them. So they should be able to have the entryway. I would presume the entryway would be more than usable at that time frame. And what they're finishing off would be in the office area.
And I guess knowing the August 30th date, I'd say, Jared, that we ask the prime to revise that schedule and show all work, basically being done by August 28th, if possible.
Greg, I believe that you have some qualifications in there about them working off schedule from the schools. So if they come back after our kids are in school, they can't work during the day. They have to do alternate shifts. Is that true?
I'm not sure if it's in the contract, but in this area, they would be working around just like they would have been prior to us starting or us still having students there. We would have had an alternate way in and out. If it is in the office way, current office, and we would not be moving our staff to the new existing office, they would still be able to access the other office. They would be able to finish any of the inside trims or rooftop, anything like that, not where our students would be walking through.
Maybe a suggested negotiating, it would be, didn't we allow them to start, I don't want to say early, but they started without students in the building, so their productivity should have been improved. So we could argue or negotiate with them this revised completion date.
They were actually to start before the students were going anyway. The senior high is the one that.
Well, that's my point, is that they were able to get started in there without the kids. So they should have been able to do more.
But we weren't having them on site yet with the contracts being delayed. So that's where the time frame I would believe.
I know that, but I'm saying if we would not have delayed them, they would have had to be doing work in there while the school was going on, right?
Right. The only the only thing they would have had to work around was the buses coming and going, pick up, drop off. The students were going to be going in different ways anyway. So that would have been a disruption. It would have only been some coordinating time where a bus would be coming down through, so they didn't have to turn and go around another way. So it would have been actually a pretty minor disruption.
Any other comments? We'll ask the administration.
Just one more. I just heard again the idea that they need the extra time because of the length of time it took to get the contracts approved. I'd like to know exactly how much longer we took, because if they're asking for 20 days and we took 10, like Terry says, we've got a little bit of room for negotiating, and with the understanding that we would be reasonable if they can't get their supplies because of COVID. But if they're basing it on the fact that we didn't get those contracts to them, then I think we should be a little bit more strict about the length of time.
The HVAC unit has the longest lead time, and that was due to partially because we were rebid it. So I do know that was an extended long lead time. I'm trying to think, it was the third week of August is when it was being released. And so that was definitely our fault because we were delaying the HVAC award. So that one alone would help extend.
Yeah, I mean, we held on to the bids we held them to their 60 days plus. So by the time we received the bids, the due date, we held them for 60 days, which I don't know if that was what they were counting on at the time when they originally submit the bids with that completion. But we had to go back to them and ask for an extension of the 60 days from their original bid date, so that hold them to the price that they originally bid at back in February. So we actually approved them and gave them a go-ahead April 13th.
Okay,
Okay,
what's up?
that's what I wanted to know, was exactly how many days it was. That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah. So Jared, if you don't mind, if you'd put together a little timeline of how far we pushed them off. And then I'm going to suggest that we do put this on next week's agenda, and then we can have that information prior to the board meeting sent out to us. Any other comments on this? Questions?
Terry, I think next Monday is the Memorial Day, so I don't think we're scheduled till June, the first or the second Monday in June for our next board meeting.
Okay.
If we need to get back to them on this extension before our next board meeting, do we have another option?
I don't know that we necessarily do, Mrs. Lowry. I mean, they're working as though, I mean, in the next couple of weeks, I mean, they're working full days there, regardless of whether we have this extension or not. I would say there's plenty of time till June 8th to get back to them on this.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? All right, we'll move on to non-agenda items, masks. This is a COVID-19 related topic. I think the administration had already placed some orders, and then we were going to discuss an additional order. Is that correct, Mr. Vukovich?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kerr, that's correct. I added this item. We did order 4,000 disposable masks at $1 per mask to have on hand when we resume school. I don't need an answer tonight, but what I'd like the committee to do is to start thinking about, do we want to order more? Or do you feel this is sufficient? And if you do want to order more, do you want to go the route of more disposable or reusable versions? I included the price below. It's kind of hard right now to make a recommendation from my purview at this point, because we don't know what the requirements are going to be coming back to school. We're going to look at the best practice, look at the CDC guidelines, and look what people recommend. But I at least want to bring it to the committee, Mr. Kerr, to get some input from everyone to see what their temperature is, what their thoughts may be on this. As you know, we've been working in the background as an administrative team on the operational and safety side, and we're looking at some different protocols and procedures that we'd like to implement for the new school year. As we're waiting to see what the CDC, the government, and PDE dictates. We don't have any clarity at this point, but I really want to just open it up to dialogue, or at least for the committee to think about what their thoughts are. For example, you could say, look, no, we'll have these on hand in case students lose them, and we can give them one for the day, but they have to bring their own. Or we can make a decision as a district to go out and get our own and have them on hand, or get one set of reusable masks for everyone. So we have options. I really just wanted to open it up to the committee to get their input and discussion. Again, knowing that we don't have clarity or certainty from the state or to calm them up with what they're expecting, but I at least wanted to get your input.
So Mike, one of my thoughts is if we're going to do reusable masks, we may want to do 2. Just because the recommendation right now is that you wash it after every day that you've used it. And we cannot make the reasonable assumption that every child is going to have access to laundry facilities where they can wash that mask, or that they will.
You're
In which
absolutely
case, putting somebody else at risk. So if you got 2, then perhaps it could be they all get collected and they get washed somehow at the end of every day and then get redistributed out to students.
Yeah, and Ms. Lauer's absolutely right. And add to that, there's 2 more items. And if you're saying, look, why are you bringing this up now? It's only May. I want to get in line because I don't know how long the line's going to be. That's 1. And then 2, don't quote me. I'll have Jared explain this. Some of these items that we're seeking to purchase could and may be reimbursable under the PEMA and FEMA guidelines. I asked Jared and Mike Travis to watch a webinar about those guidelines. Jared, are these reimbursable from what you could tell from participating in that webinar, sir?
Yeah, I would say they are. I mean, it's a material that or a supply that we're purchasing due to the COVID-19 crisis. So I would certainly, at the time, once we would receive the bill or whatever, it's something we can certainly submit for.
And then the other thing I'd be helpful on, I couldn't tell you what's best, reusable or disposables. I like Miss Lowry's idea of getting 2 reusable masks, and then we have the other 4,000 on hand. But again, I'll defer to the committee. Any other comments?
Yes. Are you conceiving, stepping back just a bit, are you conceiving that we could start the year with every student and teacher and staff member with a mask, which would be over 3,000 masks?
No, I don't know if that's what I'm saying. I think what we're saying is we're preparing for the worst, hoping for the best.
I mean, but that would be the worst is we need 3,000 masks every day, and double that we need 6 at $8 is $50,000 worth of masks.
Mhm.
I'm having a hard time conceiving that. It's a little staggering when you put a price tag on it. I don't know if we can have all the teachers with masks and no students. It's an interesting dilemma.
It is, and one thing we are looking at, Mr. Harley, again, we're just thinking this through right now, is requiring students and staff to wear their mask into schools. Once they've gone through our checks and protocols as far as health and wellness, then they would take the mask off during the day. But again, this is not set in stone, and there is a real price to this, and that's exactly why we're bringing it to the committee. Because again, the committee can push back and say, Mike, it's not our responsibility to provide those, and you can have a case there too. So that's why I'm really trying to not create a sense of paranoia, but try to get as much input on this as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Question I have.
Does any of the nursing staff have an opinion on this?
They're the ones that issued the guidance to me saying, look, it'd be best if faculty and students wore the mask getting into school, and after they go through their protocols and checks, they were able to take them off. Now, with that said, that was after some discussion about how kids who have maybe hearing disabilities would struggle hearing a teacher speak with a mask covered, or other auditory issues. So the nurses did weigh on it, and the protocols that I sent to the board that were just in draft status were based upon their recommendations, sir.
Okay, so I mean, I understand we're at the beginning of this discussion, but we need over 3,000 masks on day one, whether they take it off during school or not. If they're wearing it and wearing it in and wearing it home, we need a mask for everybody. And doing a disposable mask seems to be a disaster. We need 180 disposable masks times 3,000. So, yeah.
So let me ask this question: is how big of a lift would it be to survey the staff, all the staff, and the parents to see how many are going to bring their own mask and wear their own mask? Even if we offer them, I think what I'm seeing out in the public is, I don't know, a fair percentage of people wearing their own masks. They're making them, or someone they know is making them by the dozens, and so I'd rather do that first before we make a second order.
Yeah, Mr. Kerr, I don't think that's a bad idea at all. Defer to committee. To your point, everyone's been required to have masks already, right? So I get that. I think that's well taken. So yeah, we could definitely survey them if the committee so chooses.
I would hesitate from my perspective of putting the district in the position of having to wash all of the masks. We do not, as a district, have industrial size washers and are equipped to get to the temperature that I think is necessary to make sure that everything dies. Just not COVID-19, but other diseases that may be in those masks. I know, coming from an IU where we dealt with a lot of special needs children and having towels and different things that we used with them, we were told that you need to send those away and get those properly cleaned, as they do in medical facilities. A normal washer and dryer is just not equipped to handle that. So I would hesitate for us to be, or the district to be, responsible for washing and redistributing masks to kids every single day, knowing that you're throwing those into just a normal washer.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of that at all.
Well, that was originally why we went with the
Terry, Terry, this is Walter. That was one of my questions, but Jared answered it fairly well. The second question that I had was, does it? And again, since we're just beginning this discussion, this is just an idea I'm throwing out for consideration. But does maybe it make sense that in the primary grades they get the disposable ones, and at the senior high school and maybe the middle school they get the reusable ones? And I would defer to the educators to tell me whether the intermediate grades would be better capable of handling the disposable or the reusable ones, but kind of do it by how we think the students might actually take care of them to kind of keep the cost down.
Walter, you can't do the disposable ones for anybody. If it's over $200,000 to do disposables for the at $1 each for every day. If you throw the mask away at the end of the day and put a new mask on, it's 216,000 masks. This is it's the disposables are okay on an emergency situation, but as a long-term solution to go a whole year with masks, a disposable, just that's 2 teachers.
What if we have what if we ordered 4,000? What if we order another 6,000? That brings us to $10,000. We know that's reimbursable under the PEMA grant, according to Jared's comments. And then we ask parents to send their kids with one. And that way we have 10,000 on hand in case anyone who may forget them, we have them on hand.
I have a question.
Sure.
So my thoughts are the parents really should be responsible for the masks, but we know there will be students that financially can't, or the parents for some reason don't, or they forget theirs. So having some extras for those kids, but every year we require the kids to get their own backpacks or pencils. Or this year you say, well, you need, I think, at least 5 masks. So every day they wear a different one, wash them on the weekend. My second question was, so the nurses said about checking the kids before they come into school. Maybe the kids that get on the school bus, should they not be checked before they even enter the school bus?
No, that's a great comment, Ms. Barker. And what we're going to do is we're working on protocols with Mike Travis leading the way, that we're going to send some a letter of checklist home to parents. Basically, it says, look, here's what we want you to do before you send them out on the bus. Here's how we're going to practice social distancing on the bus and the bus stop. So we're hoping there's a trust system in place that the parents are checking the kids with their temperature before they leave school, and then we're the safety net when they do get to school. So yeah, we think you're spot on, and we're going to encourage parents to help be active participants in this process as well.
Okay, and the last question I have is, what does the union say? Like, I almost feel that maybe the union should have a little bit of a weigh-in on this, because it's the teachers. I mean, they're at risk. What do they think about the students wearing masks or not wearing masks? They could have a valid argument which way they would want to go.
Yeah, no, great point. For the sake of clarity, I'm glad you brought that up. The nurses are part of the Teachers Association, and we included association president and vice president in all of our planning. The recommendation I made to the principals and the association is, let's follow the lead of the health experts, because as we go through this, I'm in no position to make that decision. The health experts are. So the health experts in this case are part of the teacher's contract. They did make that recommendation. So yeah, I think that's a great point. I'm glad we incorporated them in there to have that voice. Now, did we survey the whole teacher staff? No. Did we survey the portion of the teacher staff that have the expertise? Yes, we did. And they're the ones that came up with that protocol.
So the only concern I have about doing some kind of check for students, whether it's before they get on the bus or before they walk into the school, is from a safety perspective. I'm not sure that's, I don't know how you would set that up to not have it be a safety concern. similar to when you have everybody from the, during a fire drill, stand outside in the same location. So we may need to get creative on how we do that.
Yeah, yes, Ms. Irene, we're working through that. I asked Mike Travis to contact our provider, talk to other people and see what else is going on in that area. We're looking at other states, what they're doing. The bus stops, there's one thing that does concern us about a kid who may come to the bus stop with the fever or temperature, and we don't know what's going on. So yes, I think your point's well taken. We're not there yet, but we have a meeting with the nurses tomorrow at 9 or 10 o'clock, and we're going to continue the conversation, but we're not there yet, to your point.
Mike, just to let you know, one of the big concerns that our contractor is expressing is the idea that if they try to do wellness checks of the students before they get on the bus, if it's at a bus stop, what do you do if a parent's not there? Do you turn a kid away? Do you send them home? What if that kid can't get back into their house? They're expected to be on that bus or expected to go to school that day and the parent leaves them.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're going to have to work all those things out. Mike, I know with you leading the way, you'll be able to have those conversations and make a recommendation to this committee, because it's going to matter what the vendor also feels comfortable with too. So yeah, we have some work to do in that area.
May I ask whether there's been any discussion about people who will not wear a mask and say that they have a health issue or that it's their constitutional right not to be forced to wear a mask? Are we going to have a general policy?
We're making a recommendation. So it's a recommendation. We have to vet that out with a little bit further with the nurses. And then before we bring it to the board or committee for formal approval or application, we'll have to vet that with our solicitor to make sure we're on solid ground. So that's why no decision's been made. My attempt to send you that document that I sent you is only based off the suggestion of another board member to show some of the planning we're doing. So yeah, again, it's nowhere set in stone, nowhere complete. Those are things that down the road, as we continue to build this wheel to get solidified. I think the question for this evening is, are you comfortable with the 4,000 we ordered? Do you want us to order more? To Ms. Barker's point, we could keep the 4,000 we have and say, hey, parents, we're asking you to bring their own, and then have these as backups, or we can order a couple more and do the same thing. So I think, if we could just get back to that original question, that's where I need some help and guidance from the committee.
So Mike, I think when we look at ordering masks, I think we need to make sure that they're appropriately sized for children. I've seen some children try to wear masks that, while they look like they're made for smaller adults, they're still too big. So I just want to make sure that we're not spending money on something that then is not going to fit.
I think you're right. Greg, can you update the committee on the ones that you selected for purchasing?
Yes. First of all, the price that I was able to get, that just changed this week. They were down to 54 cents a mask. And as far as a reusable, washable, that we have another vendor, and it's $5.50. But as far as the mask we ordered, it would be the same general ones that you get when you go to the hospital or doctor's, a standard doctor's office, not a pediatrician. So it's going to be more of a normal adult size, normal size. Now we can purchase ones that are made for pediatrics. And I don't have a price on those in front of me right now. I did research that, and I did find out that yes, they do make those. They should be available for us if we want to purchase those. Now, I believe the age size, I should write that down, but I did not. I'm thinking that it was age 8 or 9 was pretty much so considered the adult size or standard size. So there really wouldn't be as great a need for the pediatric, I'll call pediatric size.
Greg, I'm going to tell you, my kid cannot wear an adult size mask.
Okay.
Maybe she's not average, but it is absolutely huge on her. One of the other things we might want to look into is there are a couple of groups that were actually making masks. And I wonder if that is something we would consider is, seeing if there's groups that are currently making masks that would donate them.
Yeah, I don't think that hurts at all. I think if it's okay with the committee, here's what we should do. Since we know that they're only 54 cents a piece, we ordered 4,000 there. We have a little wiggle room. Let's empower Greg to get a quote on the youth size or pediatric size. Bring that back. We'll make an administrative discretion on ordering some of them. Then Greg can reach out to the other providers who may be donating, making some, and then we can see where we're at come June. But at least if we get, I think if we at least have enough to have one disposable mask on hand for every child for right now, at least getting that line. We have some other time to work those things out. Greg, I wasn't aware that the price changed, so thank you for letting me know. Last time we talked, I thought they were $1 a piece. Greg, do you find the pediatric masks to be the same rate, or are they going to be more expensive?
Sorry, I'm having trouble muting that. Their price had not come down yet. The price, like I said, that price just changed actually on me Friday. We contacted the vendor, and we actually selected a different vendor from what we initially was going to use, and that's how we end up getting the 54. And it was the only time we could order them was on Friday itself. It was that was a day that they had, and from what I would gather, or we're making an assumption of, the reason that they are offering that price, they were expecting a tremendous order with that price frame. I contacted our vendors that we typically use for custodial supplies and some other ones that we use or reached out to, and actually they were contacting them to purchase at the price that I found because that was much better price than anybody else could find. I think the cheapest that they could find before was like 84 cents, and that price came in on a Wednesday of last week. But
so Greg, did we miss our window at the 54-cent mask? Are they back now to $1 or not?
No, I do not look. Well, that I can't answer. Definitely, I don't have an answer for that because that was the initial price. They did not offer anything different. Now, they do expect the price of masks. The other people we purchased expected the price to be coming down throughout the summer as supplies are increased. So they didn't expect anything to be higher, but they do expect it to come down lower. As a matter of fact, they weren't expecting to see the price that I found somewhere until August or September. So we were pretty fortunate to come up with that price. But they did not say that was a one-time offer. I can reach out to them tomorrow, find out if they have the pediatric size, and come up with another price.
Mike, this is Walter. A question for Jared, or for Greg, I'm sorry. Greg, an adult mask barely fits me. Do they make the adult masks in several different sizes, or is it just one size fits all?
You're the first one to actually ask that question. I was not aware of that. I will definitely ask if they have a third size.
Because I use them at my shop, and it goes down to kind of like the bottom of on the upper side of the bottom of my chin. If it fits right over my nose, so I got a pretty big face, but I'm sure there's some out there that are even bigger. But the bottom line is that it's really difficult to wear one that small.
If I can make a suggestion here, I don't think having 10,000 disposable masks is the way to go. So I'm okay with having 3,000 to 4,000 masks, disposables for fill-in, and half of them are pediatric size. I know that the masks for young women, the masks that we've been building are way too big. So something like that would make sense to me. My wife has been involved in a sewing group that have made over 1,500 masks, and they right now there is no demand, so we could certainly reach back out to those people. I think it's imperative that we force the adults that we are in our buildings to wear a mask of their own providing. I think we also force the parents to provide a mask, and then and our supply is just filling in the gaps when somebody breaks one or forgets to bring one. I agree with Barb that I think we can require them to bring their own pencils and their own masks, and we get out of this business. I can't see spending the amount of money on masks of our own providing that this would require, and the headaches of getting it monitored. So my proposal would be to do 3,000 to 4,000 masks, half are pediatric, and then put in place that all the adults provide their own mask and all the kids provide their own masks.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, Tom, because like several have already mentioned, Uta and Walter, and myself seeing it too, it's difficult to get a store-bought mask to fit. So the custom ones are probably better, and maybe Mr. Vukovic, if there's families that are having trouble finding something, that we could then reach out to those sewing groups or get them in touch with someone that is making masks on the side.
Yeah, and any of those organizations making masks, let me know. I'd be glad to reach out to them. So make sure I'm hearing them correctly. The committee saying, look, we're okay with the ordering the 4,000 masks that we have on backup if we need, but then let's have an expectation. We communicate with families that you provide your own child with one to start the year if they're required, and then we'll use ours in case someone forgets them. Then, so I think we're pretty on. Is that the correct what I'm hearing?
I believe that Miss Urbani had unmuted. Did you want to say something, Kelly? Okay. Any other comments from anybody on the mask?
I agree totally with that. As for the kids that are hearing impaired and deaf, they now have masks that have a clear window where the face is. That helps. That maybe we could ask one of the organizations or something to try and make one or two or several. And the ear savers that people have been printing out on 3D printers would also help with the kids with the hearing aids, because it wouldn't be rubbing against the hearing aid and adding more bulk behind the ears. So if we know anybody with 3D printers or whatnot, we could print them ourselves. So.
Okay. Yeah, very good. And then Greg, can you follow up then with the pediatric mask and see what sizes they come in so we know what we're ordering? Because I think Ms. Lauer brings up a good point. If they're going to need different masks for the smaller kids, then let's look into that well and see if we can secure that 54-cent per unit price, if that's possible.
Any other comments? These were all good comments, and I think gave you some guidance to move forward with that.
No, I appreciate it.
Okay. Move on to number 2, the Knox Street properties discussion on an offer to purchase the property.
Yes, a couple months ago, I think back in February, we received an email from a property owner who owns 2 houses on Knox Street, which runs up behind the high school, about whether the district would be interested in purchasing 2 homes along that street that I believe the person who reached out, her parents or elderly parents own. Mr. Trout and myself in March took a walk up there just to take a look at them. We've had this motion here on the board on this committee for a couple times here. We just never seem to gotten to it. So just kind of want to bring it to closure. But it would be Mr. Trout and my recommendation right now that the district not look at these pieces of property. They're not kind of in a real good location. They're not adjacent to each other either, I believe. There is a stream that runs in between them. We just at this time don't feel that they would be useful pieces of property for the district to own. Anything you'd like to add, Greg?
Yes, the properties do have 160 foot of road frontage, 128 foot deep. There is a strip that is a street, basically, up to some homes up behind. And that separates our parking lot, the gravel parking lot, from these 2 properties. And then there's another triangle that even connects the other part of our property. And it is across on the opposite side of Knox Street. So for it to be a productive piece of property, I'm not sure how we could use that. And also there is a large amount of water and drainage that is set up in that area that it collects from everything that runs off the hill. Actually, it's been a problem for us in the past.
All right, sounds good. Any comments from anybody on that? I'd say that I agree with Jared and Greg that we probably pass. And any other comments?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like there's a useful purpose for us to make this purchase, so thanks, but no.
I totally agree, and I'm not quite sure that now is the time to be purchasing property anyhow. I think we have enough already on our plates to deal with financially.
I completely agree.
Mike, this is Walter. I certainly accept Greg and Jared's recommendation and agree that even if we were interested, this would probably not be the time. But if there's no real value to us, I certainly agree with just kind of walking away from this one. But and I know I brought this up once or twice before, and I'm glad you're on tonight, Greg, because I still think there is a property exchange that we were looking at for the people down there at Elias. We discovered some property line anomalies when we did the new gym here 10 or 15 years ago. And I don't think those were ever completely straightened out, but I think we should somehow renew that conversation with those folks and get that resolved. It's a technicality. Other than our attorney's fees, I wouldn't see there being any dollars. I know Tom was involved in that. Tom, is there anything you wanted to weigh in on there?
Well, there's just some property lines down around the some of the paved areas that in the high school parking lot we don't actually own, and the neighbor does, and we own some of his ground. So it looked to me like, Walter, what they'd set up was a just a quick claim deed on exchanging square footage for square footage, and then we'd own everything we thought we owned, and they'd own everything they thought they owned. So, but that was, God, Walter, that had to be 20 years ago that we looked at that. So we could certainly dig it out and take it and see if we can find out what's going on with it.
And we had talked about that, I think, a couple months ago too, at one of the Building and Grounds Committee meetings, and Greg and I were walking that the exact same time we walked up Knox Street. We just need to make sure we need to get to the courthouse to make sure how everything is deeded right now, because we found some drawings and everything. And we were going to do that, and then everything shut down in March. So once we are able to get back into everywhere, we will continue to look into that for you.
Thank you, Jared.
I think 20 years has been long enough. We need to get it taken care of before
Jared,
it's forgotten again, until we have a situation where we need to fix it.
Jared, could you get copies of those drawings so Walter and I can take a look at them and see if we can refresh our memories?
Sure. Yeah, we it wasn't who was the local surveyor that we had?
Parker, I think it was.
Yeah.
Parker.
Yeah, we have those that we can send to you.
Okay. Yeah. If you need copies, we can do that here too. Okay. And that's, yeah. Okay. Very
All
good.
right. Any other comments on this one? Move on. Number 3 is the East Pike roof estimates. We've discussed this for the past couple months. There's a leak in the East Pike roof, and we were going to get estimates for both repair and replacement.
Yeah, we got a price for the repair. The initial price that we had for the repair was before we noticed another section last week when I was up on the roof with Duncan when he was doing a last minute walkthrough for some information he needed for an estimate. And so he resent me today an estimate what it would cost just for the repairs. We wanted to hold off for another year. The repair was $12,250. I sent the information, I believe, to everybody. That's what it would take just to get us through if we decided not to go through with any kind of replacement for this year.
And you don't have the estimate for replacement?
Yes, we do. I sent that also. Now, unfortunately, Dunkel did not have enough time to get everything with some of the other projects that he was estimating. But I do have the one from Duralast, which was from C.E. Davis, was able to get Duralast on site and go over everything. As a matter of fact, C.E. Davis or Craig was here last week, or just last week again, double checking the thickness of the existing planking that was on the roof, which turned out only to be 1.5 inches, which is not what he at first thought it was going to be. I talked to him today with some new information that he did not provide when he sent out the quote on Friday. One of the things that he was able to do was secure special screws that Duralast themselves makes for the roof in some 2 different length increments. That part of his concern was putting down the insulation was there would be a taper, and that we only have 1.5 inches of planking to work with without going into the exposed ceiling view that you would see from that planking. It's in the classrooms. He was worried about penetrating. He said there's still a possibility 1 or 2 locations they would check as they would be putting them on, just to make sure that they didn't have an issue. But if one or if some did accidentally come through, of course they grind them off and paint them and to cosmetically so it blends back in. Now the 2 different prices for the roofing, one was it came in at $594,000, and that was for the R42 insulation, and for another $106,984, that would take it up to an R48. Now I know Mr. Hurley asked for R50. The R4, the reason it came in at R48, that was the size of insulation that they have, and in addition to what we currently have. That way, it wasn't a special order for the insulation, which would have driven the cost even higher. The only difference is we would go from a R42 to the R48. That's what the difference of the $106,000. Now, if we wanted to wait, I know for another year, we would definitely get another price from Dunkel Roofing if we did decide to go that route of not trying to get it put on. Now, I know some of the questions were, is there enough time? And I talked to Mr. Davis again today just to verify some of those points. And in our discussion, he said, would it be completely done and wrapped up before the students came? He said, highly unlikely. He said, are we talking like maybe 2 weeks after the students were back in? He said, yes, 2 or 3 weeks. He said it's not like it was going to take to the end of December or anything. Any questions?
And Dunkel cannot fit us in this year. That's why they're not quoting us this year. Or...
No, there were some issues with, the COVID-19 had a little bit of a problem, I believe, with the amount of people that they had in and with things that they were able to access and work on. It just, he said, if we'd had another week, he said he could have given us a price. He said, but right now, he said it just was too tough and could not get that price to us in time.
In time for what, though?
And in time for this meeting.
Oh, yeah, but he could still provide us one.
Yeah, oh yes, he can still, if we decide that, now, if we hold off and it takes another 2-3 weeks, then that would change the time frame for having any type of a completion on the roof. That Craig Davis said, and I know Tom Dunkel would have the same thought.
So to just go over your figures, Greg, it was $594 for the R42.
Yep. $594,008.89.
I round up.
Okay,
And then 700,000 for the R48.
701,000 if you're rounding.
Okay.
It's only $8 off.
And then your opinion and both the roofers' opinions. If we don't do it this year, are they suggesting that we do it next year then?
That is correct. Oh, by the way, also in the bid, they both have made the same comment. If we go with the R48, which of course is thicker, it would require raising the 3 existing rooftop air handlers that we have there. That price is not included. I had that highlighted. I forgot to mention that right away, but that was one of the items that he did not have time. He said he was having trouble trying to get a contractor to come out during the COVID. Some were saying that they weren't allowed to come out just for estimates. So that's why they did not have a price for that.
Greg, with the R42, would those machines not be required to be lifted?
That is correct.
Okay. What is is that R42 of new installation, or is that total installation that they have? Is that the existing installation plus the new, the 42?
Yeah, that is correct. They would add 3 inches, of insulation to bring us up to the R42. Of course,
let me jump in. The R42, how much insulation is there now?
He did not put that in the study. Excuse me. It varied because there was some tapered. Excuse me. And
what was the minimum?
I think it was 4.5. I think over top of the administration was 6.
Okay, so if we're 4 inches at 7, that's R28. So we're getting another almost R20 on there. So almost doubling at the R42, a little less than doubling what we have.
Yes, he was with our same thought would be if you're going to put a new roof on, it would make sense to increase the insulation. Of course, the price would drop significantly if you were just replacing the roof and keeping the old thickness of insulation, but that does not meet today's codes. So that would be something that we couldn't do anyway.
Yeah, Greg, we also have 3 machines mainly concentrated on the administration wing, and I believe we have a 3rd machine over the office area. What if we did R48 everywhere where there weren't machinery, and leave the machines? My concern is that the machine over top of the East Pike office is relatively new, and I think could come apart and come back together. The machines over top of the administration wing and all that duct work, I'm very nervous about touching any of that because I'm afraid that when you touch it, you're going to have it fall apart on you.
Well, those are all the same vintage. They were all put in during the renovation, 1999, and there are 2, one for the top floor of East Pike administration, and one for the lower, and then the 3rd unit, which is over top of the existing office and nurses suite. That's what takes care of that area.
I thought we put that in more recently. That was put in originally. That was put in during the major renovation.
That is correct.
Okay, and so what we did was put in some solid walls next to actually contain the air conditioning.
That is correct. We added.
Okay.
There was not anything there that kept the cold air or heated air from spilling out into the area, and we put a glass wall system at the same time when we were putting the sliding glass in for where Sherry Bradley sits.
What's the minimum roof insulation code now? You looking for that, Thomas?
Yeah, give me a moment. I can look it up. Talk amongst yourselves.
I have a question, Terry. So one of the issues in raising the R value is to reduce our heat bills or our gas or heat bills there. So so my question is, with $100,000 in the cost difference, what's the payback by only getting 6 more R values out of that 48 versus the 42? I'm wondering whether or not we shouldn't do some sort of a energy model, even if it's a simple one, to try to figure out what the actual cost benefit of that would be. It might actually pay that the payback by trying to grab those last 6 R value units may not be worth the 100,000, or it may very well be the 100,000. I don't know, but I think we should at least try to dig a little deeper as to what the long-term impact of those last 6 points would be.
Yeah, I asked that question at the same time, and both roof vendors did say that you do hit an area of diminished returns, that it takes an exorbitant amount of time to try to get money back off of that, and they felt that the R42 probably was sufficient, being that we don't run air conditioning at that building and we don't run full year.
And that's without doing the calculations. And I agree, Walter, it wouldn't be bad to probably do a quick calculation, but I was sort of leaning on the R42 also for that reason.
Gary, I'm not advocating the R42, and I'm not advocating the R48. What I'm advocating is the look-see to see what that and you know, I'm glad the contractors commented on it, but you know, when we did the ESCO, we didn't always get a straight answer out of those guys until you actually held their feet to the fire and made them do the modeling. And you know, they all had V8 moments then, and figured out that some of those higher R values that Tom was recommending and pushing for actually did make some sense. And so I just think we need to do some sort of an independent eval to you know, verify what that actual payback period would look like.
Walter, the problem with that is that you don't have any professionals involved in the project that could run that calculation for you. So, whereas in the previous project, we had people that could run that and do the commuter modeling.
Well,
So,
Tom, let me just kind of just put something else in there though. Under item number 5 of tonight, we've got a potential meeting of the new architects to discuss. Is this a small chore that maybe we could ask them to do the energy modeling for us to, because this isn't a project with AI. This is kind of independent at this point.
well, it's I mean, you certainly can ask for it. You're going to pay for it, and it's going to take 2 months. I think if we're planning on going ahead here this season, then we need to go ahead. The code is only at R30 for above the deck. U.S. Passive House is R60, so we're somewhere in between. One of the irritating things with any payback is that the Indiana Area School District can run it out pretty much forever. So the payback is it's difficult to make a payback of $100-some thousand since we don't have any air conditioning. So we're using cheap gas right now to heat the building. So if you're looking for a payback, it's not going to pay. $104,000 difference isn't going to pay back in the next decade or two. It's certainly not going to be a 7-year payback. You would only do the 48 because you want to give a board about 20 years from now a decent roof. So, but it makes me nervous to have an unknown cost on lifting machinery and ductwork. I'm sure you remember all the ductwork on top of the administration wing, how it's all up in the air there. That all gets lifted and put back together. It's going to be a mess.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Tom. But if the lifespan on the roof is 25 years, and you're going to have a 25-year payback, maybe we're better off just to go with the 42 now, and then when the roof gets replaced the next go round, then add the extra 3 inches or whatever and take it up to the R48 or something even higher.
I agree, Walter. I think the R42 is sufficient. It's almost a doubling of what we currently have. On top of that, we're going to get a white roof out of it, which will have a great reflect that summer heat.
Any other comments from anybody before?
I have 2 questions. Does the roof replacement cost include the area over the cafeteria and gym?
Yes, that's a total roof replacement on that building, the existing building.
And second question is, I know you said it was leaking at the seams. Did he say the rest of the roof, what the lifespan of it was, not just at the seams?
Yeah, we've already exceeded the life expectancy of that roof, which is typical for Indiana School District. Now, those are areas, you have to remember, this has what's called a stone ballast on top of the rubber roof. So for them to go around and evaluate the entire roof is actually possible unless you slide back all of the stone ballast to check the roof out in all of those areas. These are only the repairs that we have listed here are ones that we walked around and observed or had a current present leak.
Let me jump in, Greg. One thing you don't want to do on a roof is to go up and move the rocks and walk around on the rubber. You'll cause more damage than is currently there. So it's very difficult to evaluate piece by piece. But you have to assume that the roof is already 5 years past its service life, that all the seams are going to be suspect, and eventually all of the rubber itself will be suspect. It's an inevitability here, but you can't go up and move those stones out of the way to take a look at individual places without risking more damage to the roof.
So let me make a comment, please. Oh, who was it? Terry, were you going to say something?
Go ahead, Cindy. I'll go after you.
Okay, thank you. It's obvious to me because of the age of the roof that we need a roof. But it is not obvious to me why we have to do it this year with the finances the way they are and the uncertainty with the availability of getting it done in time and all of that. If we can get it repaired for $12,250, then I think that's the wise thing to do. We've been working and working and working, trying to find money in the budget to help make the situation better this year. I just don't see that we should go spend another $594,000 if we can, and I know John Barber would have a fit, kick the can down the road, but make a guarantee that we'll do it next year. Make that our first project for next year.
We made that commitment 2 years ago, and then here we are still sitting. It's sort of like that property dispute that we're dealing with from 20 years ago. And I'm going to respectfully disagree. I've worked on rubber roofs before. I've cut holes in them. I've patched them. I agree with Greg in knowing the type of roof this is. You cannot evaluate the rest of the condition of the roof. And if you do, you're going to damage it. And I am not in favor. We do have the money. I don't know where that's coming from, that we don't have the money. This money would either come from the bond money or from Mr. Schroes had made a recommendation, I think at the last meeting, audit meeting, maybe it was, about that $750,000 piece of the budget that was for the pensions. And but we wouldn't even have to use that. But I mean, you have to keep roofs on, and there's going to be other things that come up. This isn't going to be the only thing that comes up in the next year or two that for maintaining our buildings. And you know, I cannot, in good conscience, go into a winter knowing the age of this roof and that we already have leaks. It doesn't make any practical sense to do that.
Terry, I'd like to pile on here. The problem right now is that we have a $12,000 bill for leaks that we currently know we have. But that doesn't mean that on October 1st, we don't have another series of leaks. And on December 1st, we have another series of leaks. And that we're trying to repair this roof in the middle of winter. There is no warranty that the leaks we're repairing are the only leaks we're going to have this year. So there's a more than a decent chance that there will be additional leaks. One of the problems we have in this, one of the nice things about this building is the wooden roof that we have, the plank roof in all those classrooms. But you don't want that to get soaked, and you don't want it to get stained and damaged. So the only thing we know, Cinda, right now is that we have a $12,000 repair bill for the leaks we know we have. But there will be more leaks. What we saw at the high school was a cascading a set of expenses to the point that we're spending, I think at one point we're spending over $50,000 a year repairing a roof that should have been replaced.
And I understand that, but how frequently and how quickly have the leaks been coming now? If the leaks we have right now is 12,250, have those leaks appeared over the last year? When did those leaks occur? And I understand we can have more leaks coming, but we don't have them now. And we're not doing what they did at the high school, putting it off years. I say, put it off till next year and write it in stone. Just that's it. That's what we're doing. And not back off for any reason whatsoever. The other thing is, before I let go, if we're so concerned about fixing roofs on buildings, I totally agree. We need to keep our buildings in good working order. We need to keep them sound. Then we need to make arrangements to fix the roof at Horace Mann. It's leaking. I've heard it's leaking for years. It needs to be fixed if we're going to do this. That's my 2 cents.
Greg, would you address the Horace Mann roof? And I'm puzzled with the leaking problem at Horace Mann because it's all the flat roofs are done. And so the only roof that is possible leaking is the shingle roof, and I'm not aware that is leaking like a sieve.
Yeah, we have had some repairs on the shingled roof in the past. My knowledge, we don't have any currently. Not having people in the building every day in those two. Well, Cheney and I walk Eisenhower and Horace Mann. I definitely make it one of my tasks when I'm walking around. I'm looking up at the roofs, excuse me, at the ceilings, and making sure that we don't have anything new that's active. I have not come across anything that's either dripping or that has a visible new soft. What I would carry, I'd find a yardstick if I saw something that had some discoloration to it, and never came across anything that was soft or indicated a new fresh leak.
The roof at the shingle roof at Horace Mann is also beyond its service life. There's no doubt about that. But it's a sloped shingle roof. Water doesn't lay on it, and water sheds. So, and it's also a roof that is relatively easy to repair should a leak occur. In that it's a shingle roof. So this is a different situation. At some point, the roof's going to need to be replaced. But that roof, I'm okay with patching it should that occur. But I'm not aware, Cinda, of any massive amount of leaks. I think the urban legend here is that it's leaking. I know none of the flat roofs are leaking, or Greg would have had those fixed. So the only roof
let's move on because Greg already went over this. The only other thing I wanted to add that I forgot, I would want to get the estimate from Dunkel and compare that to Door Last Stove.
Terry, this is Walter. Let me kind of weigh in here, looking at it from the entire board's perspective. I certainly agree that if we're going to do this, you're right, we should probably at least make sure we've gathered Dunkel's thoughts on it as well. But the decision that the board needs to make at our next board meeting is, do we repair repair the roof or replace it this year. And Cinda's got good points, and Tom and you, Terry, both have good points. But this, what I'd really like is for this committee to make a recommendation, regardless of what that is, and then kind of like what we did on the East Pike entryway, we'll put a motion on the table to either repair it or replace it and get it done this year, and then it'll be the will of the board.
Uta, did you want to say anything? Your mic's open. I just hate throwing good money away, and as tight at times as we are, that doesn't make any sense to me to pour at least $12,000 into repairs when, you know, the other option here is to make a commitment to do it next year. If you're going to do that, you might as well do the replacement this year. So that's going to be my suggestion, is not to throw money after repairing it and making a commitment to do it next year. I mean, we're just going to pay more. And with, like I mentioned last month, the oil prices are about as low as they're going to get, and which should help for a better cost this year. Not sure what oil prices could be even lower next year, but that's not likely. So my recommendation is that we get the estimate from Dunkel, have both estimates on the agenda for next meeting.
Okay, Terry, that's exactly what I'm looking for, is recommendation from the committee as to the board as to which way to proceed. And again, you bring up some good points, and so does Cinda. But I think we're kind of, in order to move this thing off dead center, I think we take it to the entire board, let them make that decision, and then we move on from there.
I'm good with that. Anybody, any other comments on this before we move on? Okay, thank you. Number 4 is a follow-up on discussion with the HVAC contractor about possible changes to the HVAC system. As everybody knows, and it was discussed earlier, the HVAC system for the East Pike entranceway was rebid, but the bids did not come in like we were hoping. And so I'm not sure if it was Jared or Greg or both, was going to have some follow-up discussion with the HVAC contractor that was awarded the project to see about possible changes to the as-designed HVAC system. So Jared or Greg?
I'll let Greg take that one. I know he had the conversation with the contractor.
Yes, I did have a conversation with the contractor. He and I went through a lot of the items that were proposed for it, and we found a couple things, very minor things, and we will be getting the change order. It was for some roof curbs and some other, I think maybe that ended up being all that it was. He didn't think trying to do a design build was going to be any less expensive, in his opinion. He said he looked at he saw what was proposed from the second bid on it and what was initial, and he said for what we are building, that is pretty much so what he would expect to see without going into a complete new design. And he was not willing to actually want to go into that and try to redesign something going into the project where we were with the project as far as starting. That was his those were his comments.
Any questions, comments for Greg? Not hearing anything. Hopefully this issue's done. We discussed it for several months. So number 5, potential meeting with new architects. Are there projects we want them to start looking at? Not sure who's going to cover this?
Yeah. Mr. Kerr, the new architects that the board approved a couple months ago reached out to me. They kind of understood the past month or two why we weren't having any conversations with them, and I had a conversation kind of right around the middle of March that at this point we just with everything going on, we really weren't looking and starting any new projects or starting those conversations, at least till everything was kind of a little more under control. So we had a conversation last week, and I told them that I would bring this up to the board if the board is ready to kind of have their first meeting with them to discuss any potential projects you would like them to start looking at. I didn't think tonight was the time to bring them in just with the agenda. We can plan to have them at the next meeting if the board wishes to, or any other meeting that the committee may want. If you would like to have a meeting with them at all right now.
I guess I'm going to open it up to the floor. I'm not aware of anything, but I'll leave it up. Anybody have anything that they would want to meet with the new architect about?
Did we not say our next project was the Eisenhower entrance?
That was it, yes. And I guess
I'd like to have the board consider the accessibility to the middle wing at Ben Franklin. A third of that building is inaccessible. In any plan moving forward, that building is still being utilized. Right now, the class planning has to incorporate who's handicapped and who isn't. If there's a handicapped kid in the middle of the year, they have to move the classrooms. It seems to me that not an overarching study, but one that's very focused on how to get that middle wing accessible, I think would be very useful to do in a preamble to even an Eisenhower entry. It's a focused, very limited project. We could certainly get a fixed cost on the study, have them do a study with cost involved, so we can take a look at it. And
I wouldn't call it a study. I would call it evaluating how to access the wing. It's not. We're not going to study the whole building. We're going to
just that middle wing. I think it's so critical for that building to be accessible. They're using that. What is that, Greg? 6-8 classrooms on that upper wing, and the 2 big rooms in the basement. How we get those accessible, it just seems to me to be critical that we solve that problem moving forward.
Okay. Any other comments? We have Barb mentioning the Eisenhower and Tom mentioning the Ben Franklin.
And I agree. Oh, sorry. I agree with Tom about the accessibility of Ben Franklin, and you also have accessibility at Horseman. And we had a feasibility study done, and I can't remember off the top of my head if there was any big items in that. That would be a very important document of what we need to really be looking at.
Terry, this is Walter. I might have to defer here to Mike for some guidance on this, but in this case, since we're now back to yellow for the county, would we be able to, with the proper social distancing and so on, actually meet face to face with these guys? I think that if we're going to try to build a good relationship with them, face to face might be a better venue than doing it by Google Hangout. But I'm not sure yet even whether we could do that or not. But that would be my suggestion.
Mr. President, you could, if the board so choose, thought that was important to have the face-to-face conversation, we could, have a larger room, right, to make sure we account for the social distancing rules and expectations. So hypothetically, as long as there's no more than 25, we could separate ourselves in a bigger room, say a gymnasium, spread tables out, so we're all in there, and we could adhere to those guidelines, sir. So that's feasible if the board so choose.
Walter, if we have a focused project like accessibility at Ben Franklin, I don't see the purpose of having an overarching meeting. It's going to be, here's 3 ways to solve the problem, and here's the prices, the cost of each solution. Do we want to move ahead or not? That's what I'm interested in, and that's all.
Tom, no problem on the. You and I are both smart enough. It's either a ramp, a chairlift, or an elevator, or some combination thereof. But I understand why that one, you're correct, could be done through some sort of a Google Hangout. My concern is that if we're actually starting to look at Eisenhower's entrance, we might want something that's going to be potentially it could be a little more involved project, or it could be as simple as just moving that one classroom and to the secretary, was kind of bandied around there initially. But I'm that's more where I'm thinking that we need to at some point have to, for some of these larger things, to have that face to face rather than the Google Hangout.
Walter, I think, and Terry, I think one of the things that's really important is that we're really clear on what our expectations are, whether it comes to communication, response time, documentation, hearing what we're saying. When we say we don't want this to turn into a multi-million-dollar project, we're actually serious. So we don't want to see a huge price tag, which I think has been our experience with other folks. And, I think if we're clear about what our expectations are and what we're looking to get from the new architects and the level of the projects that we're exploring, I think we'll be in good shape.
I agree, and I think that's maybe more reason to meet them face to face.
Right, but I also Terry, I don't know that we all need to be there.
Right.
Maybe just the committee and folks from the administration office. I mean, that's not to say I won't be there if y'all feel it's important that the whole board is there, but it might be a little overwhelming.
I would like to be there, but health-wise, I don't know if I could actually physically be there.
We could do both. We could have the face-to-face and then have the virtual also.
Terry, you could do the building committee and then invite the board members to join in on Zoom.
Yeah.
But in any case, I would think that in the next couple of weeks we could get that meeting together, and see if there's any. The main reason to do it now is if there's any reason to move any projects forward in this season.
Well, I think we ought to get board support to move any project forward. And because I have some hesitation of other than fixing a leaking roof. Nobody knows what this fall, this winter, next spring is going to be, but I don't know if that's a reason to wait either. I guess we all have concerns. So I'm okay, I guess, Jared, if you want to do an email to us, get some dates from us, and I guess it doesn't hurt to talk.
Yeah, I will. I can reach out and I will try and set something up at a time that we can. Sounds like the committee would like at least the committee members to meet in person. We can set up a bigger room somewhere, and then we can allow access through Google Hangout or Zoom for anybody else who would like to join.
All right, sounds good. If anybody has anything else before we move on?
If any results come out of that meeting, Terry, the intention would be to bring any additional costs, any contract costs to the board then?
Absolutely.
In the June meeting, if that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very good.
Okay, moving on to number 6, review and discussion of debt spreadsheet. Probably several months ago, I put together a Excel spreadsheet because it's been in my head for the past couple of years of what our debt was, how much did we pay toward the debt each year, and when was it going to start to, when was that yearly debt payment going to start to decline? So Jared, our illustrious business manager, populated the spreadsheet, and to me, it's really a good budgeting tool from both a overall budgeting aspect, but also of the Building Grounds Transportation Committee of trying to forecast when we can do maintenance projects or when we can do these like entryway projects and that sort of thing. So I don't know if Randy, you have that to bring up to put on the screen, but it really helps, I believe, the Audit and Finance Committee looking at this, and this committee, in addition to the administration having it. I can forward it to you, Randy. I think, unless Jared, you can grab it quickly. I think I can find it here.
Jared, do you know what date you mailed that to us?
That's what I was just looking for to see. I know I sent that to everybody, and
I'll go back on my email, but I wasn't finding it quickly.
I'm almost to it. I found it.
Terry, what date do you have that at?
April 6th, 9:44 a.m. I just sent it to you, Randy. And maybe we could go to number 7 while Randy's going to bring that up. Follow-up discussion on the condition of playground equipment district-wide. This was probably on the agenda, I'm going to say maybe in January or something. And we'd asked, I believe it was Greg and his staff, to go around and look at the condition of the equipment and then also see if it was age appropriate at the different buildings. So.
Yes, we went around and did check. And we do need to make some investments for the playgrounds. Some of it is not age appropriate at the 2 buildings that we've Ben Franklin and East Pike, where we have the pre-K. We don't have a age 2 to 5 structures. The other structures, according to the playground representative, claim that they do fit a wide range that you would see at elementary schools, basically K through 6. The equipment to add the 2 items or play zones, we'll call them, one for East Pike and one for Ben Franklin. They're roughly somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000 each. And that is, I have a play structure number if anybody was interested in seeing what they are. But that is the CoStar pricing, and that does include labor and the concrete.
But Greg, that doesn't include a fall surface.
That's correct. It does not include the fall surface.
Yeah.
That is just for the playground. That would be if we would remove an existing piece of playground that we have and put this in its place. if we wanted to expand on that, then yes, we would need to dug out for the entire play surface to be put down. And if we would go forward and put something new in, I would recommend that we would go more of the matting opposed to the current, what we use of the wood chips. Right now, we do have a lot. I mean, they're all wood chips, and we've not switched over to anything due to some drainage issues we do have in some areas. That's why we haven't switched anything over, especially to a crumb rubber. That would, in some areas, that would go down into the systems that we would not want to see going down out into the streams or rivers, because it would in flooding areas or heavy rain times with the slope that we have, it would raise, wash down into the storm sewer system and then wash out. We definitely would not want to see that. So we would have to, or lean towards, if we go something different from the wood carpet, which is what we traditionally use, to a square or a poured surface, which does have some considerable cost to them. If there is any thought to, I'm almost afraid to say this, but if there's any thought to ever changing buildings back to anything different than the current configuration, I would hesitate in putting those surfaces down and updating all the play surface and playground equipment. We are hitting the age where we will want to start to look at changing play structures, maybe every 2 years, do a playground at one of the schools, just to get it in a rotating basis. That would be my recommendation.
Further, Greg, the recommendation would be to do a poured rubber surface or something similar to that, that would meet the slopes of the handicaps. So you're going to be less than 2% in any direction, and you also need to solve your drainage problems as you do that work. But moving toward inclusive playgrounds, I think, is something that we need to be doing in the long run.
I believe Justin was writing out a few grants a few months ago. I'd given us a webpage that had a bunch of grants for inclusive playgrounds so that schools and stuff could install them a little cheaper. I don't know, did we ever hear back about any of those grants yet?
I know Justin is working on them, Ms. Blank. Which ones were submitted or what the total ones are, I can get that out for you tomorrow. I can ask Justin, update the board tomorrow. Off the top of my head, I do not know what they are. I do know he was pursuing, looking into them, and I'll get back to everyone tomorrow with that information.
Greg,
Awesome.
Greg, do you have an idea which playgrounds are in the worst condition? Do you have a hierarchy for them? Which one needs the most work right now?
Well, right now, if you were to ask me, if you gave me total charge, what would I do? I would add the pre-K structures in so that they had something that would be age appropriate for them. As far as the other ones, I mean, we have a lot of swings. They don't change really. You know, we maintain the swings as far as the chain and the seats, replace those whenever they start to wear. As far as the play structures themselves, they were pretty much so all installed about the same time and have about the same wear. When the representative came out and looked at everything, he was quite surprised. He said they were holding up extremely well. He said, you know, just the normal maintenance items, you know, tightening the bolts, checking the bolts, replacing certain things have cracked. We have replaced certain pieces on different ones. We just, I think it was, East Pike, we just did a replacement on one of the slides. It was the top part. We've replaced items out of Ben Franklin, and we've made repairs into some items at Horace Mann too. Eisenhower has been, we had some about 2 or 3 years ago at Eisenhower as well.
Greg, you put in money every year for carpets and furniture and stuff in a rolling budget. why don't you add to that rolling budget playground and do what you just said you're going to do, and it'd be a 6-10 year cycle to go through all the playgrounds, but we should be doing this every year, and you have that already set up on some items, but this one would be I think you could certainly justify this as opposed to doing 6 playgrounds all at once because somebody got hurt.
Right. Well, you always, we're just now getting to the age where the representative was here, excuse me, was saying that we need to start looking at it. He said, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, he was surprised at the condition. He said it's not what you would normally see at, especially at some school districts in larger cities. He said ours don't appear to have any wear or anything beside normal wear, and does not see abuse, which is nice to say about our public, that fortunately they have not gone in and either vandalized or abused everything, and that's definitely a credit to the neighbors and neighborhoods that we have.
Greg, I'd like to suggest that you propose an annual number to the board to include, to Terry at least, in the building committee, to include repair and replacement of the playgrounds, and including going to rubber surfaces over the next 5-6 years.
And prioritize them, by year.
Well, but Greg needs to know that he has, $5,000 or $50,000 every year to work on these, like he has in the carpets, and then he would repair, replace, upgrade as he sees fit. He'd come back to the board, but he would be able to do this on a rotating basis. Would make much more sense than the way we're doing it.
Right. Any other comments from anybody?
I have one. Can you refresh my memory why we can't use the pre-K counts grant money towards pre-K playground equipment?
There's nothing preventing us from using pre-K counts money to pay for playground equipment. It would just need to be prorated based on the number of non-pre-K kids and pre-K kids who are using it. But they could certainly pay for a portion of it.
I'm going to throw out that I'd like to see, in addition to what you were suggesting, Tom, but also prioritize that list by fiscal year and a cost associated with it. But then also, it sort of sounds like the committee and the board members here are in agreement to do something this summer with at least the pre-K at the 2 schools. And do we want to nip away at one complete one at one of the schools, since we're going to be there working already?
I think if we focus on the pre-K, Greg, Terry, that'll be enough for this summer.
I don't think we have enough information. I would like to hear back on some of the grant stuff, and I don't think now's the time to be installing new playground equipment.
When would be the time?
When would you prefer to do that?
When we don't have a $3 million deficit because we don't have a bunch of earned income tax missing from our budget. Because this could go on for a long time. And currently, you can't play on the playground equipment.
So did somebody say, and I didn't hear it, what is the typical lifespan for the playground equipment? Greg, can you answer that?
I'm looking at my notes to see if he gave me one. I know it's.
Well, when were those playgrounds put in? You said they were put in all about the same time. That'll give me an idea.
They were put in somewhere around 99. I'm going to, is what I seem to remember.
So it's like 20 years, in other words. Is 20 years is what we've gotten out of them, which he seems to think is better than normal.
We've done very well with the. He did phrase it a different way, but I'm not going to that way.
Well,
Greg, if I can remember, I think that was probably one of the first projects that happened when I started here back in '96. So and it was done over the course of maybe 3 or 4 years. So yeah, all those playgrounds have been either installed in that '97 to 2000 range.
Thank you. And I agree. I think that there should be money put in Greg's little list with carpeting and the other yearly expenses so that those things can be replaced and get it on a rotating cycle. But I also agree with Barbara. I don't think things are going to get better soon. And if they do, then we can always spend the money. But if they don't, I don't think we should be planning on major expenses replacing whole playgrounds at this time.
I'm not advocating replacing whole playgrounds in mass, but I am advocating that we deal with the safety issues that come up. My concern with the wood base is that it wears out. It wears and develops hard spots. It's not. It's a mess. But my biggest concern is that Greg leaves the playground and it has 12 inches of sawdust in it, and 2 weeks later there's a hole there and somebody gets hurt. So whereas on the rubber, once we put it down, it's down for a good long time.
So Tom, speaking of a rubber surface, does that get treated with anything before it's put down besides the fact that it's just shredded tires?
I don't like the shredded tire, the loose stuff. The ones I like are the poured or the tiles. The poured's very nice because it's porous, and it's springy. I've seen several of those in the area that seem to work pretty well. The shredded rubber I think is just like the wood, but could cause more troubles. I'm interested in something that's more permanent.
So am I hearing that we're going to wait and then we're going to investigate the grants? And Jared, you're going to let us know how much of the pre-K money could go toward this, I guess. And then we'll carry this to next month's agenda then.
I think you carry it to next month's agenda, but this is one of those things where if there's things that we have to do on the playgrounds, we have to do. Greg needs the okay to do them on the safety side, and if we're going to provide a pre-K program, I'm surprised we don't have a pre-K playground. That seems to be an oversight. And Greg left.
Well, I think it was due to the reshuffle of grades. But I agree with you, Tom. If there's a safety thing, we ought to immediately make the repairs or close the equipment down.
Yeah, Greg, Terry, I don't think we've ever had a pre-K playground. We started the program without a specific age group playground that young.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the last agenda item, and we're going to wait for more information, and it'll be on the agenda. Thanks, Randy, for putting up the spreadsheet. Pretty self-explanatory. If you go across the row where the titles are, that first is the state fiscal year. The next is the beginning bond debt at the beginning of the fiscal year. Column 3 or C is the bond principal payments per fiscal year. The next column is the bond interest payments per fiscal year. And then column F would be the total fiscal year debt payments. And you can see out in year 27, 28 that it drops by about 700,000. And then the next year it drops by over $1 million. And then it sort of continues out the rest until all the current bonds are paid off. So, to me, this is a really good forecast of, if at some point in the future, we do have to borrow more money, I'd sort of like to use this projection to align any type of future debt for any type of, project that the board thinks is needed. And then the smaller rectangle on the right side of the screen, or on the right side of the spreadsheet, is just each of the bond series that we currently have, what the total original bond amount was, the bond amount remaining at the end of fiscal year 1920, and then what the bond was for, and then the date that debt is eligible to be refinanced, and then also the last column is the fiscal year when the bond is paid off. Any comments, questions? And again, I think this will toll for the Audit and Finance Committee also.
Carrie, I was going to ask before
Carrie.
and I never got to it.
Go ahead, Cinda.
I'm okay. Under the 2017 bond, it says refi GESA. What is that?
Mr. Crownhour.
That's the ESCO project, the Guaranteed Energy
Okay.
Savings.
Okay, I know it is ESCO. That clears it up.
Yep, we just refinanced a small portion of the one.
Walter.
Terry, I agree with you. This spreadsheet, I think, is picture's worth 1,000 words, and this sure kind of tells our story, kind of where we are and where we're headed. I do think, though, that next year, December 2021, we should certainly look at the restructuring of that elementary school debt. There's a possibility of, I know it was set up that way for a laddered approach for piling more debt on it, but we may want to pull some of those numbers back and pay it off sooner.
I agree with you, Walter. I think, we talk about these bonds every year in the audit and stuff, but I really, this does really paint a picture. And, I'm going to throw out that with COVID now, especially, I think this board and the previous board was very lucky in not going forward with that Ben Franklin project and incurring another, whatever it would have been, $20-30 million in debt. Because the picture wouldn't have been as pretty as this one, I guess, is. So. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to say that it's nice to see that when the bond debt does come down, the district will be able to absorb rising costs such as salaries and healthcare without having to just raise taxes to pay for that. So it's nice to see that a little buffer in that, because we know healthcare costs will go up and salaries will end up going up.
I have to agree with you, Barb. That's a good point. And thanks, Jared, for populating this. I'm sure you had a lot of these figures at hand, but it still took you some time. Anything else on this, or anything for the good of the order? Mr. Vukovich, are you still on?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay.
Terry, this is Walter. I have a question for the good of the order.
Go ahead, sir.
I think he muted himself, Mr. Kerr.
You're muted, Walter.
Terry.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
The question I have for the committee is, several months ago, we had, I think, Tom, you brought it to the committee, a potential grant for the riparian work down by Ben Franklin. Do you or does anybody know where that went or what the status of it is?
I don't, but Jared, do you, have you been following that?
You mean the stream work down by
Yes,
at Ben Franklin?
yes.
I have not heard anything on that.
Can you bounce them and see what's going on?
Sure.
Great, that'll work.
All right, one other comment on this spreadsheet. I'm glad, Randy, it's still up there. The 2015 $3 million bond for the various capital projects. I'm looking, it's eligible to refinance here in August. Is there any advantage to looking at that or the one above it? I guess the bond amount remaining on that one pretty small.
I saw that too, and I was wondering if we could just
Yeah.
pay that 317,000, just get it out of there. But I don't understand bonds, so.
It'll be paid off in September of this year, 2020, that 317. We can certainly, I mean, I can tell you PFM, who's our financial advisor, is constantly monitoring when our bonds are able to be refinanced. And if doing that would save us money, it's not something that the district has to initiate. I mean, we can always certainly ask to have that reviewed, and I just recently did. At this point, there is nothing that is eligible that is worth refinancing because most of it was borrowed when interest rates were already historically low. And as those new ones are coming due here or have met the 5-year minimum requirement, they will be taking a look at them. So most of the time they will come to me before I have to go to them when there is something that would benefit the district.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Okay, thank you.
Thanks for a good meeting.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Terry.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.